my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker today. He is the Associate Administrator for Pipeline Safety with PHMSA at the U.S. Department of Transportation. I imagine he is a very, very familiar face to many of us in the room. He has served in that role since 2016. Sometimes when I think I have a hard job, I just think about Alan Mayberry's job and realize mine's not nearly as hard. The safety of more than 3 million miles of the nation's pipelines are under Alan's watch and PHMSA's watch, along with growing expectations of safety from the public, and you got that right, as well as Congress incentivizing a new generation of pipelines as part of the energy transition. So now recognizing that Alan's job is hard doesn't mean that we'll go easy on him and go easy on PHMSA, of course, and that we're not always going to agree on the best way to make pipelines safer. But I do really appreciate our working relationship. Alan cares deeply about safety, and he cares about the public. And so I'm honored to invite him up to be our keynote speaker.
Bill, thank you very much for that introduction. Let me get set up here. But it's really an honor and a pleasure to be here today. And Bill, we did miss you last year. It almost seemed like you were there, though. Your engagement in the meeting still was great. As Carl, what was his name? Carl Weimer filled in for you. But anyway, it's been great working with you over the last year, and I enjoy our numerous conversations and engagement about important issues related to pipeline safety. And, you know, also just like to express my appreciation for Bill, you and your staff and the board developing such an incredible agenda that covers a variety of issues that are important to us at PHMSA, and they're important to all of us, I know. You know, we look forward to this conference every year with the Office of Pipeline Safety. You know, I feel like it's a sort of mega engagement. As Bill had mentioned, you know, this is the one opportunity where such varying viewpoints are able to get together. There are other opportunities we have in our advisory committees, but that's another story I can be glad to talk further about. But this meeting is incredible for bringing the different viewpoints together. We learn from it. As a safety professional, safety regulator, it helps keep us centered. I think it helps keep all of us centered. That pipeline safety is just so very important. Thanks also for bringing more people in. I think there's got to be a lot of first-time attendees here. It's kind of hard to see out there, but can I get a show of hands of who's here for the first time? Yeah, pretty good bit, I'd say about. Yeah, thanks for coming. Awesome. So I'll keep that in mind as I try to avoid the use of too much jargon. But you know, we take what we learn from here and we apply it. We spread the knowledge, and we expect others that attend this meeting do as well. And I know that happens. You know, the bottom line is, you know, our mission at PHMSA is pipeline safety and in protecting the environment. But it's not just what we do on behalf of American. It's really part of the DNA that makes us in the Office of Pipeline Safety. It's just so very important to us. You know, unfortunately, my ability to get together with stakeholders individually is limited because of what I do, but it just is even more reason to be here and engage with you today. But I really value that time and the interaction that we have, and it's my hope that I'm able to meet with all of you at some point and get to know you. Let me start off by acknowledging a few key players in the world of pipeline safety. First off, you know, our advisory committees, of which we have two, a gas committee and a liquid committee, and those two groups advise us on policy making. We have a meeting coming up in a couple weeks that I'll touch on here a little bit later, but there are two members that are associated with the Pipeline Safety Trust that are on those committees. First off, Bill Karam is on our liquid advisory committee, and then Sarah Gossman, who's on the board, is on our gas pipeline advisory committee meeting. Sarah, I look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks. Well, Bill, too, I think you'll be there, but we have a lot of work to do in that week that you'll be in the D.C. area for our meeting. I'd also like to recognize, you our state partners who are just incredible at carrying out the Secretary's program on to protect Americans of about 80% of the infrastructure that's out there. A lot of assets that are out there, about almost 3 million miles of the total mileage that's out there is overseen by the states. And representing the states, I think here is Mary Zanter from South Dakota. She's with the Public Service Commission in South Dakota, but she's an incredible state partner for us from South Dakota, and we couldn't do it without you. I believe we also have some members of labor here. I won't call you out individually or embarrass you, but I hearken back to my early days as a greenhorn engineer and just working alongside and learning so much from the workers that are out there, the frontline workers. And, when I think about what I do today and the visualization of things that I see or run across, I think of, there's times I was working, whether it was under a house or in a trench or on a project many, many years ago. I really learned so much from people affiliated with Local 798, the Pipeliners Union, or the IBEW was another group, or the Teamsters. So my appreciation for, really part of the success in my career was based on learnings from, the people that are on the front lines. So I appreciate your engagement with us, in these 2 days at this meeting. Just meetings like this are just an essential engagement activity for us. As I, go through a few updates today, you're going to hear the word engagement a few times, and it's really a hallmark, I would say, of our last year in the Office of Pipeline Safety is a different level of engagement, if you will. Now, I will add, engagement is not necessarily easy if done right. It's not complicated, but it's important. I think we've have some success stories that we'll share over the last year. I'm on a panel later on today that will also talk about that a bit, but just keep in mind the word engagement as I invoke that a bit here and there. I did want to make a side note about, I don't know if you've heard, but in past conferences, there's been a group that has assembled around 9 p.m. to go to Cafe Du Monde for the coveted beignet walk. So if you're interested in that, I think people, I'll be in the lobby at, say, 9 o'clock this evening, and we can take a walk over there. That's a fun thing. And, the cool thing about that is all of us with diverse backgrounds are there just, enjoying something that's just fun to do, walking through New Orleans, and, just a social time to talk about what matters to us. And it just helps build that relationship that I think helps solve problems. I was going to first go over, some of the things that we're working on the policy side of things. If you look at, the smattering of what I'll give you today, there's the policy work, there's our oversight program, and then there's how we're evolving to the environment around us. So I plan to cover those 3 areas. And I meant to mention, as I was introducing a few people, is, welcome to the webcast members. I appreciate your tuning in as well today to hear what we have to say and to participate here. I do recommend you come here next time. There's nothing like being here, and I'm sorry you can't participate in that walk a little bit later. That'll be fun. It's notable, looking at the policy work and our delivery of, and the expectations of a variety of stakeholders, but it was notable in our most recent reauthorization, the Pipes Act of 2020, that our our mission shifted to include reducing greenhouse gas emissions. It shifted in 2 ways, and that was one. The other way was it also allowed us to consider reducing the social cost of carbon, or consider the social cost of carbon, or reducing greenhouse gas emissions and the policies that we put out. So those 2 aspects were notable in that. And for those of you first-timers who are new to this, pipeline safety, we were created out of the Natural Gas Pipeline Safety Act of 1968. In fact, the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back that created our agency happened in Louisiana, not too far from here. But it was one of those high consequence events that the public said and Congress said, hey, time out, we've got to do something. And so as out of the Natural Gas Act of 1968, a national uniform standard was directed to be created that we developed and published back in 1970. It was the original gas code. And there are things we're changing that I'll talk about here in a minute that are still original to that code, especially when you look at leak detection. But so we were authorized in 1968, and about every 4 years we go back to Congress for a health checkup and be reauthorized. It's not an automatic that we keep staying in business. We have to go back and justify our existence. And one way I like to put it is these statutes are developed for reauthorization, we get what I call, say, a performance improvement plan in the form of mandates. And they are, actions that we need to take, improvements we need to take to improve pipeline safety across the U.S. And that's really based on the experience that, has been developed over the ensuing years that were under the previous authorization. It informs the next authorization. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. We could go on and on about the process, but, it's part of what makes this country great, I feel. And, it's an incredible process that we're engaged in that is very deliberative, transparent, and participatory. Last year we worked further, and I know Tristan and a number of us mentioned last year, we worked further to embed environmental and social justice into our work. I'll discuss this a little bit more in a minute. And while it can get confusing, the jargon, like I said, I'll try to keep to a minimum. What's a notice of proposed rulemaking versus an advanced notice of proposed rulemaking versus a final rule versus, corrective action order or safety order or notice of probable violation. There's jargon we use that kind of rolls off our tongue. My apologies for that. But I will try to make sense of it as I describe those types of things. And furthermore, if you have any questions, we have a number of PHMSA people here at the meeting over the next couple of days, but feel free to lean on us to get any answers you need on the process. We had a very productive year since we last met on the policymaking side. There's just been a lot in play. And what I thought I'd touch on first is some of the outreach activities we did last year that informed policymaking. There are a number of meetings we held and activities, events that we held that help inform where we go with the policies that we put out. One aspect of informing our policymaking that we've engaged a bit more on lately is international outreach. Now, my good friend Ian Calhoun, the chief engineer at the Canada Energy Regulator, is here, and we're certainly partners in pipeline safety because there's so many pipelines that cross between the United States and Canada, so it's very necessary for us to compare notes, because a lot of the issues we see on either side of the border, they don't know there's a border there, and they can happen on both sides. So we definitely collaborate, work closely with our Canadian friends. But also internationally, I had the opportunity this past year to go to Berlin to the Pipeline Technology Conference, and I was totally amazed. Not so much, well, first of all, as you may expect, they're dealing with a lot of the same issues we are here in the U.S. internationally, whether it's geotechnical issues on pipelines, corrosion issues, hydrogen, CO2. There's a strong interest in it, and providing a great forum to work and collaborate and understand each other's perspectives on that. But I was most amazed by how they look to us in the United States in our process in developing policies. They are laser focused on what's going on in the U.S. and look to the updates that we put out related to the one I'll talk about here in a minute, leak detection and repair. They're highly interested in that. They're highly interested in CO2 and what we're doing in there. They're highly interested in hydrogen. But the processing in the United States is just so unique that, where it's very transparent. You can be anywhere in the world and kind of have a view in what's going on. But they do look at it and they do reference it. I was in one session there where this one person that had a presentation had a photo of a prior administrator of PHMSA in it and pointing to some of the work that we had done on a valve study. But there's definitely an interest in what we do. But anyway, getting closer to home, let's talk about what we did in the past year related to some activities to inform rulemaking. If you look, first after the conference last year, we had a public meeting in Houston, Texas, that covered a variety of topics. And that was the intent, just, hey, let's bring a lot of things out there and just get input on it. Very important topics, from CO2 to hydrogen to pipeline safety management systems, to giving a report out of our inspections on leak detection or leak reduction work of the regulated industry, what we also call our Section 114 inspections. It was a great meeting. It was in the middle of the oil patch, so as you can imagine, we had mostly operators there for that meeting. We had a little bit of CO2 covered there, but we also have planned to do a meeting later, which I'll get into here in a minute. Then in February, we had, this wasn't really a specific rulemaking meeting, but we had a public briefing, if you will, in Freeport, Texas, with the local residents around there. And that meeting was really, the intent of that was to communicate about an incident that happened at the Freeport facility that shut it down for a number of months, and addressing concerns over the safety of that facility. That was a very well-received meeting. It provided an opportunity, which I think is a theme with the public engagement we've done, is just the need to be listened to hear people and hear their concerns. Fortunately, in that incident, by the way, no one was hurt, but it did create alarm. And certainly, if you look at LNG as far as, export facilities go, it's a key piece of the energy portfolio, if you will, of the United States and the export of that product, certainly in light of the war in Europe, and to ensuring adequate supplies to Europe with the cutoff of Russian gas. But of course, that's all for naught if we don't, operate safely. So I think that was a very productive meeting to engage and communicate on what we had done and what to expect in the future. Then we had a meeting in Boulder, Colorado on underground storage. And that was really a meeting to follow up from a prior public meeting we had, just to see where we need to go next and see what our inspection enforcement history was on underground storage. But that was also a very useful meeting for us to see where we may need to go next in policy making on underground storage. You may recall that we first got into the underground storage, gas storage business in the aftermath of the Aliso Canyon failure back in 2015 in California. And then later in May 2023, we had probably one of the most insightful, engaging meetings that I can recall in Des Moines, Iowa, on CO2. And I believe some of you are present today that were at that meeting, but I just, want to reiterate the thanks for your engagement in that meeting, and thanks to I know Bill, you and your staff, and Carolyn, and all did a lot to educate the public that did attend that meeting, and I was incredibly impressed with the level of the questions. The informed level of the questions were quite good, and I think, it really helped us, as we were in rulemaking on CO2, and helped guide us as we were in the process of writing that rule. There's a panel later on today, and I know Max Kiva's on that. We'll talk a little bit more about that process. But that was a very impactful meeting. I know up front, and Bill and I talked a good bit, and others, we'd not really brought a meeting like that right to the middle of an area of controversy, but I must say it was a rewarding experience for us. Will we do that all the time? I can't promise, but we will make our best effort to. They take a lot of work, and we are limited in resources, but it is our goal to effectively engage the public, so we will do what's needed to get that input. A couple of weeks ago, we had a research and development forum in the Washington, D.C. area, and those are designed to inform our research spending, which also helps inform future policymaking, rulemaking, and the like. As you might imagine, CO2 and hydrogen all figured large in that meeting, and there were a couple of work groups in that area, but Also, the usual subjects that we cannot lose sight of related to anomaly detection and other threats, LNG, other areas. I mean, it covered a pretty broad area, but certainly we do, as I've mentioned, have and are looking at the evolving landscape related to hydrogen and the increased use of CO2 or moving CO2 for carbon sequestration. We do need to keep our eye on the ball related to the traditional issues we're dealing with that also cause pipeline failures, and those were covered there. And then lastly, the end of this month, week after Thanksgiving, I've been called a Scrooge for that because it's, why are you making me travel on Sunday after I'm sorry, but it's the only time we could fit it in. The week after Thanksgiving, we have a gas pipeline advisory committee meeting to deliberate on and get a recommendation from the GPAC on where we go with the final rule for leak detection and repair. So we're looking forward to that. We're also, that meeting is not just about leak detection and repair. It's another rule there too that's also a major significant rule for us is class location. And we have a congressional mandate on both of those rules that we'll be deliberating on at that meeting. And so look forward to that, but it will be a long week because those are two significant rules. As far as policies that we've put out this year, really in the prior year we have a backdrop of the gas transmission rules, updates to that, the valve rule. But this past year really focused on issuing some proposed rules. One, the notice of proposed rulemaking for leak detection and repair, which is going to be talked about in 2 weeks. And then we also published the gas distribution notice of proposed rulemaking. That latter one addresses a lot of the mandates that were in the Lionel-Rondon Pipeline Safety Act that was part of our 2020 Pipes Act, and there are improvements to the distribution systems for improved safety there. And it really applies lessons learned from the accident that occurred in Merrimack Valley where one person was killed. Lionel-Rondon's the fatality there, unfortunately. But we'll learn from that, and we will work that rule through the process. And I would expect an advisory committee meeting, which all of our rules run through, will happen sometime next year on that one. Let me talk a little bit, before I get to our oversight program, another aspect that's been, it's an area of growth, if you will, for our agency is in rule implementation. There are a lot of rules that we've put out there, and they have to be implemented right. We have to let our inspectors know and understand the rule. They've been following along through the process, but when the final rule comes out and how we landed on it, our inspectors need to know and understand how to enforce that. So that's been a big part of implementing these rules in the busy regulatory agenda we've had. Really wasn't going to get much into that besides making mention of that, but if you have any questions on how we're doing that, it's been a big, important area for us. Let me talk a little bit about our oversight program. Let me start with this related to people. I often say that people are our greatest resource, and we are focused on hiring people and making sure that we have a professional, world-class staff, and we have some of the best people in the world that we bring to bear on pipeline safety issues. But it's not easy. We do have great success in hiring, but we also lose a good many people, too, to the industry that pays more. We've been working with Congress, and I know we've been supported by the industry and others, the public, in ways that we can close the gap in pay. So there are a number of initiatives that have been implemented, such as special pay rate and incentive bonuses and the like, that we hope will help, but we'll continue to work at in this area because it's been very, very difficult, and it's just an area we need to focus on. It's not a problem that's unique to us anyway. It's an issue that many people are dealing with. I would say that, if you're a young person considering where your career might be, there are a lot of options out there. And I will tell you, now there just could not be a better time than now to get engaged in pipeline safety. We're dealing with some amazing issues. We're dealing with, the evolution of supply. Regardless of the fact that, hydrocarbons, whatever you think about them today, they're going to be around for some time, and we need help. We need your help in being part of the solution as we look to energy transition. And speaking of energy transition, it's nothing new. It's been a hallmark of this great country, from the old days of wood to coal gas to natural gas, to imported natural gas when we thought we were running out, to exporting natural gas when, my gosh, looks like we have plenty. And now we're looking to reduce the carbon footprint by renewable natural gas, by synthetic natural gas, biogas, hydrogen blending. It's just a great time, an exciting time to be involved in the issues that we're dealing with every day to address the changing energy landscape. And it's not just limited to gas. We're also dealing with it on the liquid side, from, say, transition to aviation fuels, sustainable aviation fuel, for instance. Ethanol is something we dealt with related to blending. Carbon sequestration is an exciting area as well. A lot of issues related to it, as evidenced by the interest from the public that we've seen. So I just wanted to say that, and Bill, my apologies, I am recruiting. We are hiring. And while working in policymaking in the U.S. government is fascinating, because we deal with the entire United States and meet some really fantastic people and work with incredibly smart people. Find your niche. It may be with an operator. It may be with a public advocate. Those are all incredibly important efforts that we need, the best minds, the young minds that are coming out of school to come work in this space. So that's my plug for it. Obviously, I prefer for you to come to us, but I would encourage you to get involved in this exciting field. Let me talk a little bit about our oversight program. First and foremost, we expect safety performance of the operators we regulate. One tool that we use often is probably more the bread and butter is we inspect operators. We may issue what we call a notice of probable violation. It's an allegation of a safety infraction, and that ultimately goes through an administrative process that ends up in a final order that I ultimately sign that adjudicates the case. If you look at the statistics for just, for 2022, the full year 2022, we issued about $12 million in civil penalties to operators across the U.S. Year to date in 2023, we're standing on just over that amount year to date, so we're a little bit ahead of last year. But those are record amounts for the agency, the highest they've ever been. Now, that's one yardstick that people often use to measure our success. I will argue with you, though, that while it's something that we measure and we will continue to measure and will continue to do, it's probably not the best yardstick, I would say, because if you look at impact on the regulated industry, if you look at, say, the cost of our orders, corrective action orders, for instance, that mandate the investment in safety improvements, let me give you a comparison. Since 2010, if you look at the cost of compliance with corrective action orders, it's about $4 billion. For that same period of time, civil penalties were about $165 million. So you can see there's quite a big disparity there. And certainly, yeah, we're going to continue to do the enforcement thing. I'm not telling you we're going to stop that. That's really part of, the checks and balances. It's so very important. But if you look at impact, I will tell you these corrective action orders that result in direct, system investment are very impactful. And so I wanted to give that bit of context. We'll continue to use the full array of tools we have. Congress, in creating us, gave us those tools. We've put them into code, and we will continue to use them. But our approach is really, one, we expect safety performance, and two, we have a variety of tools we use, that are at our disposal. Be glad to answer any questions you may have on that, but I just wanted to give a big snippet on our oversight program that will continue. And also, you may have heard, and we've talked at previous conferences related to pipeline safety management systems. And I've said here before that we will, continue to update policies. We'll continue to do our oversight program, but it still relies on people doing the right thing and, having the culture to look for what can happen as opposed to always looking yesterday and responding to yesterday's accident. We really need to focus on preventing tomorrow's accident. Okay, let me shift gears here, talk a little bit about our work on, and really part of our evolution on environmental and social justice. And last year we talked about this a bit and things we were doing. I know Tristan covered it as well. And this topic has been the subject of presidential executive orders and memoranda. But in the Office of Pipeline Safety, we found that we really never focused on, where we inspected, how it was more a matter of convenience. But what we've done over the last year is we've implemented, a review of our, where we go. We kind of target more on balancing between underserved communities and other communities. We also are asking a series of questions of operators. It's not part of a law or a regulation, but it's a survey that we do to see what operators are doing in that area. But I just wanted to make sure you knew that we were including that. And I think it's notable because, it's just one of those things, a light bulb goes off. Hey, we weren't really looking at that, and it's the right thing to do. Okay, it's not convenient to go to this area to look at a test station and how an operator has maintained his records over here or a valve over here because we don't feel safe. We really need to mix it up and be fair in that regard. You may ask, how do we keep track of where underserved areas are located? Now, if you were here last year, you would have seen Blaine Keener demonstrate a tool, a social equity mapping tool that we recently put on our website. He did an amazing job demonstrating it. It's available today if you go to our website. Just look up social equity, PHMSA. If you Google that, you'll get to it. But it's an amazing tool that, and there are instructions on there on how to use it. But that helps guide us. It's also helpful for the public, obviously, and for operators to see how they're doing as well. Let me shift gears here a minute yet again and talk a bit about another initiative we're excited about. I bring it up because it's in the state of Louisiana where we are, but it's our LNG Center of Excellence that we're creating somewhere in Louisiana. We have not announced the location yet. I hope we'll be able to do that in the coming weeks, but this is a PipeSec initiative that called for PHMSA, Office of Pipeline Safety, to set up a liquefied natural gas center of excellence somewhere in a state with the largest export, and that is the state of Louisiana. And the goal is for us to advance the U.S. as a global expert and leader in LNG operations. The center will be a repository of best practices in the LNG industry and spur collaboration among stakeholders. So this, a lot of work being done in this area right now, and we look forward to that being stood up in the near future. We're currently working with our federal partners to see if there are ways to collaborate and with the center, not just it being only involved PHMSA, but also involving other agencies like DOE and Coast Guard and Maritime Administration. Looking to the future, I mentioned about things we've been working on, but what can you expect coming down the pike? There's always an interest in, hey, when is this going to happen? When is the rule going to be final? And I can tell you, let me address that, but I can tell you, if you look at the priorities that we have right now related to rules that will be final as we go forward, leak detection and repair, gas distribution and CO2 figure, to be probably the largest to just let's get them out the door. They're needed. People want them. We want them. We need them. And those will be a focus. We have the advisory committee meeting on the leak detection rule coming up in a couple of weeks. We have not had advisory committee meetings on these other 3 rules, so we will need to first issue the CO2 rule as a proposed rule, issue an LNG rule, and then after that there will be an advisory committee meeting. So that'll be some months away, but our focus is to as fast as we can get those done. If you look at the web chart that's on our website for these rules, CO2, we're looking to be in a position to wrap that up and be able to publish it by February. We're hopeful that that can be done, but a lot has to happen. A lot has to be lined up for that to happen. LNG will be sometime later. LNG is quite important to us. While we have found a way, and we do regulate the LNG industry effectively, we do it heavily by guidance, and we work closely with FERC in that oversight, but it is an area where that's a major important rule that we need to update, because the current regulation for LNG really focuses on traditional peak shaving plants, when really the name of the game in LNG nowadays is in export facilities. Further down the road, we have an interest in hydrogen, and at some point we'll probably be in a rulemaking on that. I can't say when. We're focusing a lot on research right now, but I know there's a lot of work and a lot of interest in, establishing, more prescription in how you deal with, say, a hydrogen incident. And, the whole aspect of blending, which is the subject of research for us, is one we're dealing with. Potential impact radius, don't forget that. We dealt with that, have been talking about that over the last couple of years, because there's an NTSB recommendation that we look at that calculation and update it, and we're looking at that, and that potentially could be a rulemaking in the near term. There are other areas too. I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have about where we're going, but that's just a snippet of the ones. As I get close to wrapping up here, I just wanted to underscore the significance of the mission of the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, and more specifically, the Office of Pipeline Safety. It's not just a matter of regulatory compliance. It's a moral imperative. Our work directly impacts the lives and well-being of our fellow citizens, and the health of our environment, and the economic stability of our communities. It's just so incredibly important. And we came here today and tomorrow, as we come back tomorrow, and we have such a variety of backgrounds, which I find fascinating and I enjoy. We learn from each other and we discuss solutions. I challenge each of you to make the most of your time here. Bill and his team have put together an impressive agenda, for both days, and I look forward to talking with you and getting to know many of you. And at the end of the meeting, let's leave with a renewed sense of purpose and determination to continue our important work. I'm excited about the process we will make in the coming months and years as we work together to ensure pipeline safety and the resiliency of our pipeline infrastructure. Let me just close with I wanted to share a personal story about an experience I had over the last year that really just underscored the importance of what we all do. And I'm always touched, and I hearken back to just when it happened, the stories of Liam, Wade, and Stephen, and the significant impact that their stories had on my career, and frankly, what I value. And this year I felt strongly, the pull to keep me centered in the important work we do. And, of course, always coming here helps in that center focus, keeping it centered where it matters. Well, I had the experience, following a recent failure of a pipeline in Virginia. I crossed paths with a person who lived near that pipeline that was involved in the failure. And, I was wrapping up. I had already been to the accident site, so I was wrapping up and kind of taking my coveralls off and putting them in the car. And the person came up to me and asked, was sharing, their experience of what happened. Now, they fortunately weren't near the impact area, but they were close because the person described the orange glow in the picture window and the vibration of the ground around. Unfortunately, in this accident, no one was killed. But nonetheless, it just was a reminder about the importance of, our work is in protecting and caring about people, about striving to avoid accidents, make sure we find better ways to engage and communicate. In this case, I can't say that that wasn't done, but as I've found over my years of experience in regulating pipeline safety, we constantly need to evolve and find better ways to engage with the public to understand what's going on. It's just so incredibly important. And it's the human connection in pipeline safety that really drives me. And I can tell you on behalf of, the over 300 pipeline safety professional peoples at PHMSA, we're truly and unapologetically dedicated to pipeline safety. And we will continuously and tirelessly work to prevent these types of accidents. Anyway, I just wanted to conclude with that story there and mention that, that's why we're here. We're here to learn. We're here to share experiences and to get better. So that's all I have for today. I would be glad to entertain any questions. I think we have a few minutes. Hopefully I didn't go too far over. Okay.
Right over.
All right, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayberry. My name is Maury Johnson. I'm from Southern West Virginia. The issue of pipe safety is highly important to me and the people in Virginia and West Virginia. And I just want to thank you for having me here. Would love to talk to anybody about pipe safety and pipelines. I also want to acknowledge 3 other people here who are not here about pipe safety. I have 3 friends from East Palestine, Ohio. I was over there last week at the train derailment. And what I saw over there, it may be a train, but the same thing can happen on a pipeline. So I'd like for them to raise their hand. Hillary Flint, Jamie and Chris Wallace, you want to talk to these people and hear their story? I got him here. I said, Hillary, you need to come here. Thank you all for making it happen to get to him here. And we'll be talking later.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Travis Hallam, resident troublemaker, 3 affiliated tribes.
Yeah, I know.
So one of the things I'd like to see is for you guys to be, and I know it's difficult because of the congressional level, but more proactive on preventing incidents. So one of the things we deal with right now is there's a corridor of pipelines going across Lake Sakakawea, and if you're familiar with pipeline safety, it's called a pipeline bowl. First 5 years are at risk, and the last 5 years after 50, you're at risk. There's a real nice sweet spot. These pipelines have already been extended once, so they're at 75 years, 25 years past their life expectancy. They're up for renewal again. And we don't object to the infrastructure, but we insist on responsible infrastructure, especially when it comes to water. So what we're saying is if you're going to give them the renewal, make them bore it under the lake. So there's no risk potential of it failing into that for the next 25 years. Just doesn't make sense to have a 100-year-old pipeline that was built for 50 years.
Thank you, Travis. That's our whole purpose for being, is to prevent accidents. And certainly as a pipeline asset ages, the regulation as it is, and it's a minimum standard, it naturally invokes different requirements, and which tend to become more intense the older an asset may be with different threats that may act. But we push, and it's imperative that this standard is the floor, and sometimes it takes going beyond the standard to achieve safety. And it's also a reason why we and many have been promoting pipeline safety management systems. It's a big part of our focus on going beyond regulation, going beyond the federal minimum standard. So, good, but great point. Thanks, Travis.
I think we have time for one more, right, Bill? Okay. Coming.
Thank you. Am I heard? Yes, thank you. I'm Swami Dayananda from Buckingham, Virginia. And I want to first of all thank you so very much for this opportunity. I've never been in a room with an industry people and a government people and activists. This would just never happen while I was fighting, standing to stop Atlantic Coast Pipeline. So just my question, I have a lot, but right now is, you spoke of environmental justice and social justice that you're very interested to, and you already are engaged in it. So what I'm wondering is, pipeline safety, is it equally, are you more safe because you are more wealthy and more white? You're not a minority. So do you have a group of people who are actually going to be, or already focused on the safety for those who are already not safe? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. And first of all, as a fellow Virginian, both of you, I can assure you we have your back. But looking at the outreach functions that we've done and it related to environmental justice, we, out of 165 events so far this year, 67 of them were to disadvantaged communities. So I meant to actually mention that in my talking. It'll be talked about a little bit later on an engagement panel, but we have invoked that in making sure that we reach out to communities that are underserved and not just going to the wealthy communities. Thank you.